Professional sports has never been a democracy. It has never been a charity. It has never been a safe space where participation trophies get handed out to legacy names who stopped generating revenue a decade ago. Professional sports is a cold, merciless economic engine, and that engine runs on one fuel and one fuel only: eyeballs, attention, dollars. You either magnetize those three things toward your product, or the machine discards you without hesitation and without apology. For 25 brutal years, the Women's National Basketball Association survived not because it generated wealth, but because the NBA wrote the checks and absorbed the losses. Hundreds of millions of dollars evaporated. Season after season, the league existed as a financial black hole, kept alive by institutional obligation rather than actual market demand. And inside that artificially protected bubble, a core of veteran players constructed an elaborate fantasy. They convinced themselves that they were cultural titans. They convinced themselves that the small, loyal audience they had cultivated represented proof of their global star power. They were wrong. Catastrophically, delusionally, expensively wrong. And the moment the actual revenue-generating talent walked through the door, the entire illusion collapsed in real time. Caitlin Clark did not just enter the WNBA. She detonated inside it. She shattered viewership records that had stood for decades. She dragged a financially hemorrhaging league onto the radar of billion-dollar television networks. She forced the mainstream sports world to pay attention to a product it had spent years politely ignoring. She personally injected billions in future revenue potential into an organization that had never once operated in the black. And when she did all of that, the veterans who had spent careers demanding recognition for their contributions to the sport did not welcome her. They did not celebrate what her arrival meant for the financial future of every player in the league. They circled the wagons and they came for her. That decision is now destroying them. But here is what nobody told you was coming next, and it is the move that just changed everything. Caitlin Clark reported to Team USA training camp. She walked away from the wreckage of the WNBA labor war, stepped onto an international court surrounded by elite global talent, and executed the single most devastating power move in the modern history of women's basketball. She did it without raising her voice. She did it without posting a single word on social media. She did it by simply showing up, playing basketball, and letting the cameras roll. And what those cameras captured just annihilated every piece of leverage the WNBA Players Association thought they had. Watch what happens at that training camp. Watch the energy on that floor. Watch Caitlin Clark competing alongside Breanna Stewart and the next generation of American talent, laughing between drills, locked in during possessions, draining game winners in practice, and sending the entire gym into chaos. This is not manufactured content. This is not a publicity tour. This is a genuinely elite athlete operating at the peak of her powers in a completely drama-free environment, surrounded by competitors who are there for one reason only: to win basketball games and represent their country. There is no bitterness in that gymnasium. There is no passive-aggressive body language, no leaking of internal letters to journalists, no coordinated campaigns to undermine a teammate's public image. There is just basketball. Pure, marketable, sponsor-friendly, television-ready basketball. And Caitlin Clark is at the center of all of it. Now hold that image in your mind and place it directly next to what the WNBA Players Association has been broadcasting to the world for the last several months. The WNBPA has been running a masterclass in self-destruction. They have positioned themselves as oppressed workers suffering under the boot of billionaire ownership. They have demanded guaranteed maximum contracts, free housing arrangements, and a 50% split of the league's gross revenue. 50%. Of a league that has never once turned a profit. Of a league that survived for a quarter century purely on NBA subsidies. They have created such a toxic internal atmosphere that their own elected vice presidents started leaking confidential correspondence to ESPN because they could not get basic transparency from their own leadership. 80% of the league's players are sitting at home right now, unsigned, unemployed, waiting for a deal to get done so they can get back to work. Those players want a deal. Their agents want a deal. The only people who do not want a deal are the veteran power brokers at the top of the union hierarchy who have figured out something critically important. A work stoppage is the only weapon left in their arsenal, and the target of that weapon is not the billionaire owners. The target is Caitlin Clark. But before we get to the psychological warfare at the core of this labor dispute, you need to understand exactly how badly the veterans already lost the market value argument. Because they did not just lose it in theory. They lost it empirically with their own money in front of a national television audience. The veterans built Unrivaled. They constructed an entire parallel basketball league from the ground up, specifically designed to showcase their talent and prove that the product they offered had standalone commercial value, completely independent of Caitlin Clark. They wanted to demonstrate to the owners, the networks, and the sporting public that the audience belonged to them. That the fans were loyal to the legacy players, not to the rookie from Iowa who had spent one season dismantling every assumption about what was possible in women's basketball. So they ran the experiment. TNT invested heavily, hoping to capitalize on the momentum Clark had generated for the sport. The cameras rolled, the games tipped off. And the American sports audience looked at the product on their screens, noticed that number 22 was not on the floor, and immediately changed the channel. The ratings were not disappointing. They were not underwhelming. They were a catastrophic rejection. The market delivered its verdict with zero ambiguity. Franchise cornerstone Aaliyah Boston suffered a serious injury in a meaningless exhibition game that nobody was watching, compounding the financial disaster with a genuine human cost. The veterans had played their strongest card and the audience had thrown it back in their faces. Without Caitlin Clark, they cannot hold a national television audience. That is not an opinion. That is a documented, financially verified, empirically proven fact. Now watch what happens the moment Clark steps onto a court. A practice drill at Team USA training camp. A game winner in a competitive scrimmage situation. The clip goes viral before the session is even over. Adam Silver sees it. Kathy Engelbert sees it. Joe Tsai, Matt Ishbia, and every billionaire owner in the league's ownership group sees it. And every single one of them understands exactly what they are watching. They are not watching a basketball player hit a mid-range jumper. They are watching market capitalization in motion. They are watching the asset that justifies the $2 billion television deal the league just secured. They are watching proof that their most important business decision is not how to respond to the union's strike threat. Their most important business decision is making sure that asset remains protected, productive, and pointed toward maximum revenue generation. And here's the number that makes every union threat evaporate instantly. If the WNBA shuts down on March 10th, Caitlin Clark does not lose a single dollar of meaningful income. She does not lose relevance. She does not lose momentum. She transitions her audience directly to the FIBA World Cup qualifiers, which are being broadcast on TNT Sports. The exact same network that watched the Unrivaled ratings collapse in real time, wrote off the veterans as a failed investment, and immediately pivoted every available resource toward acquiring the international broadcasting rights specifically to put Caitlin Clark on their air. The network did not chase the sport. The network chased one person. If the WNBA veterans pull the trigger on March 10th, they are not punishing the owners. They are handing TNT the undivided attention of every women's basketball fan in North America for a FIBA broadcast that Clark will dominate from the opening possession. The veterans face complete financial obliteration. They lose their salaries. They lose their housing subsidies they are currently demanding the league provide. They lose the media platform that the WNBA's institutional infrastructure gives them. They fade. And while they are fading, Clark is expanding globally on international television, building her brand in markets the WNBA has never been able to reach, and generating hundreds of millions in value for every smart commercial partner who followed her out the door. This is not leverage. This is a hostage negotiation where the hostage takers just discovered that their hostage has a helicopter on the roof. So why are the veteran leaders still threatening to press the button? Because this dispute was never actually about the economics. The mainstream sports media has spent months carefully avoiding the real story, packaging this as a standard labor negotiation between athletes and billionaire owners. It is not that. Strip away the press releases and the carefully worded statements, and what you are left with is something far more psychologically raw. For 15-20 years, a core group of veteran players controlled every cultural lever inside women's basketball. They set the locker room hierarchy. They determined which rookies received respect and which ones were made to understand their place. They managed the media relationships. They owned the narrative. Then a 22-year-old from Iowa walked in and dismantled the entire power structure in a single season. Caitlin Clark did not just outperform their statistical records. She made their endorsement portfolios look like rounding errors. Nike, Gatorade, multi-million-dollar deals that dwarfed anything the veterans had accumulated over careers spanning decades. She brought millions of new fans into the building, fans who had never watched a WNBA game before and did not know or care about the unwritten social codes the veterans had spent years enforcing. She made the old guard economically irrelevant before her rookie contract even expired, and the old guard cannot forgive her for it. Think about the specific psychological torment of watching someone younger, newer, and more naturally magnetic than you arrive and immediately eclipse everything you spent 2 decades constructing. These veterans genuinely believed they had built something lasting. They believed the cultural capital they had accumulated entitled them to permanent institutional power. And Caitlin Clark walked in and bought the building without even knowing she was bidding on it. Now she is returning for her second season, fully healthy, fully adjusted to the professional game, completely unlocked and ready to operate without the physical limitations that slowed her during year one. The veterans who understand what an unshackled second-year Clark looks like on a WNBA court are terrified, not of losing a labor negotiation, of losing the last thin illusion that they still matter. A work stoppage steals a season of her prime. It slows the momentum. It temporarily silences the noise that has been drowning out their legacy since the moment she arrived. They are willing to trigger a financial catastrophe that destroys the $2 billion media deal, eliminates the salaries of 80% of their own membership, and permanently damages the sport's commercial credibility. All of it, burn it all, just to slow her down. That is not labor strategy. That is weaponized resentment. That is an organization consuming itself alive. And then Caitlin Clark stepped in front of the international media at Team USA camp and said something that made every calculated move by the veterans collapse simultaneously. She said it was every kid's dream. She talked about writing it down in 3rd grade. She acknowledged the players who came before her, named teammates she had competed alongside on junior national teams, and spoke about the journey with the kind of genuine reverence that cannot be faked for a camera. She mentioned that Cara Lawson had told her and Paige Buchers that only a few of them would make it to the senior national team, and she positioned that reality not as pressure but as privilege. Every single part of the journey, she said, is really special. That is the kill shot, not a feud, not a clapback, not a leaked letter or a strategically timed media exclusive. A 22-year-old athlete standing on the biggest stage in the world, demonstrating genuine humility, expressing authentic gratitude, and radiating the kind of unmanufactured professionalism that corporate sponsors spend billions trying to find. The veteran leadership desperately needs the public to see Caitlin Clark as an entitled disruptor who does not respect what came before her. They need that narrative to justify their hostility. She just buried it in front of a global audience without throwing a single punch. By appearing at Team USA camp, Clark has exited the blast radius entirely. The FIBA qualifiers are a legitimate global sporting event. She is about to play high-stakes, meaningful international basketball on TNT, surrounded by the best players in the world, operating in an environment completely outside the WNBA's jurisdiction, free from the flagrant fouls, the coordinated disrespect, and the bitter institutional politics that have defined her first year as a professional. The WNBA's leadership is standing in a burning building, holding a detonator and threatening to press it on March 10th. The billionaire owners are not looking at them. They are watching the Team USA training camp footage on their phones and calculating exactly how much money Clark is going to generate for the networks that are smart enough to follow her wherever she goes next. If the Players Association forces a lockout, they will not be remembered as labor heroes who fought a righteous battle against corporate exploitation. History will record them as the group that had the most commercially successful moment in the sport's entire existence handed to them, chose to set it on fire out of personal jealousy, alienated the new fan base that Clark had spent an entire career building, and handed the billionaire owners the justification they needed to restructure the entire financial architecture of the league on ownership's terms permanently. When the dust settles, when the smoke finally clears and the WNBA crawls back to the negotiating table having accomplished nothing, Caitlin Clark will still be the most watched, most marketable, most commercially valuable female athlete on the planet. The veterans who orchestrated this destruction will be fighting over roster spots on a restructured league that now holds every chip because the players gave away every piece of leverage they had. The illusion is finished. The false narrative of veteran solidarity has been completely exposed. The sports business does not care about tenure. It does not reward loyalty to a legacy that stopped generating revenue. It rewards the athletes who move the needle, fill the seats, and justify the rights fees. You either create value or you get replaced by someone who does. That is the only law that matters in this arena. Drop into the comments right now. Do you believe the veteran leadership is deliberately engineering a lockout specifically to derail Caitlin Clark's second season? Will they actually follow through on March 10th, or do they blink when the financial reality becomes impossible to ignore? How enormous are the FIBA qualifier ratings going to be when Clark steps onto that international court while the WNBA sits in darkness? And do you think the billionaire owners are about to use this strike as the opportunity to permanently crush the union's leverage for the next decade? Get in the comments. This conversation is happening whether the media covers it or not. If you want the unfiltered, aggressive business-first truth about professional sports, the kind of analysis that treats you like an adult and refuses to sanitize what is actually happening inside these organizations, subscribe right now, turn on every notification, and share this video with every sports fan you know. The corporate spin stops here. The raw reality of what money does to people, leagues, and legacies, that is all we do. Stay locked in. The next one drops soon.